Normally when we talk about Surya Namaskar and standing postures, everybody wants to talk about, like rotate your sit bones upwards to stretch your hamstrings and hold your hands like this and do that. And no doubt, all of that is relevant and it's great. But what about the philosophy behind this practice? And what about where all this came from? And the kind of mindset from which it was created? Because as foreign practitioners, we generally want to think in terms of exercise and physiology and why it is that we do push-ups in a certain way and how that leads into the next thing, etc. And then our other mad pursuit is how old is everything? We want to know how old it is, and the older it is, the more authentic it becomes, and the newer it is, the less authentic, and that's a separate issue. So Surya Namaskar, in my opinion, is the oldest aspect of modern yoga. And I firmly believe that. There are people who perhaps would argue, first of all, everything is argued. Everything is arguable. You can find another perspective and somebody who disagrees, no doubt. But Surya Namaskar is mentioned in the Vedas. It's mentioned in the Rig Veda. The Gayatri Mantra is in the Rig Veda. And I think I've said before that the Gayatri Mantra is not to Gayatri. Gayatri is the wife of Brahma. That's referring to a particular meter of chant. Gayatri is to Savitri, the mother of the sun. So Tat Savitri Varenyam, this line is saying that it's directed to her. And so what does Surya Namaskar actually mean? And in my opinion, it's not asana, and that's not just my opinion, that's what B.N.S. Iyengar would have said, that's what all the scholars in Mysore would say. It's a prayer. It's a prayer that the bright good thing in you is going to win against the stuff that brings you down. You can think about God and the devil, you can think about evolution and devolution, you can think about higher and lower nature, you can label it however you like, but like the Native American parable where the elder is telling the young boy that there are two wolves fighting to the death, and one is good and one is evil, and they're both inside of you. And the boy asks, which one of them is going to win? And the elder says, the one that you feed is going to win. So Surya Namaskar could be interpreted as feeding the good wolf, feeding the bright side. And as we spoke about earlier with Alwar, and I'm kind of mixing the lectures in my mind a little bit because I've been listening to several things close together, but Aditya Hritayam is in the back of the Surya Namaskar manual written by Pattabhi Jois in the 1970s. So I've read that manual at one point, and I read that prayer, and I decided right away, oh my God, I should learn this. This is really connected with Surya Namaskar. And personally, I have experienced many times that I get on my mat to do Surya Namaskar, and I feel kind of tired and not that inspired to practice yoga. I'm doing it because I know that I need to, and it's an effortful thing to do. And then at the end of Surya Namaskar, I feel ecstatic and I feel so happy, and it lifts me up in so many ways. And I think any rational person would say, man, why is that? How does it work? How does it do it? What is it about this simple thing? How is it that 10 minutes later I can feel so much different? And I developed my own personal opinion that it has some kind of ancient mojo that just rewires me a little bit and helps me feel better. And I think that that's very much in keeping with the spirit of it. And so you start your primary series with Surya Namaskar. It should be said that the Surya Namaskar that we're doing is not that old. It's like the iPhone 14 of Surya Namaskars. It's that idea of saluting the sun, prostrating to the sun, doing movements and reciting mantras also to the sun, often the rising sun. The first rays of the rising sun are seen to be healing. They have a special power. They invigorate you. And these movements and these mantras were meant to be said in the first rays of the rising sun. So those ideas are very ancient and they're very Indian, and they go back to the Rig Veda, and they're, according to Wikipedia, the Rig Veda is 3,500 years old. I've heard people say that it's 10,000 years old. I don't, that's not my area. I don't care. It's old enough. It's older than me. If it's 3,500 or 45 or 10,000, it's not really important. The important thing is to understand the thought behind this practice. So it starts with this. And if primary series would be a song, as I love to say, Surya Namaskar would be the meter and scale for that song. I believe it should be done very intentionally. It should be done with great concentration, great precision in terms of breath and movement. It's establishing the vibe of the whole practice. And in a teaching situation, it's also establishing the vibe of the whole class, which is to come. So then you start with what? Parangustasana, Parahastasana, Trikonasanas, Parsvakonasanas, angles, all these angles. Now, it was my dear friend and Guru Bai. Guru Bai means somebody who studied under the same teacher as you, and she and I are both long-term students of Sri B.S. Iyengar. And she said that if you added up all of the angles and triangles in the standing postures of primary series, you would get the Sri Yantra. And that, so if you know what the Sri Yantra is, that's the 9 triangles. And a yantra is a geometric shape that creates power. So if you look into how Hindu temples are built, they bury a yantra under the ground before they even start building on top of it. It's deep magic. It's very esoteric. So this idea that like a prism sources light into it, and they believed that you were doing that with your body as you did this practice. So in my opinion, as best I've been able to understand from studying with my teachers and the people that I've worked with, the thinking behind the construction of this primary series was much more aligned towards that. It's an energetic practice, especially Surya Namaskar, no doubt. You could compare it with something more like Qigong, or it's dealing with energies inside the body. You're calling on, the sun is related to the soul. The soul is the life force inside of you. The soul is that which leaves at the time of death, we can say. That much, I think, should be clear. We could argue, of course, about what is the soul and what does it mean and blah, blah, blah. But when somebody dies, the corpse is lying there. The person that you loved is not there anymore. And you can say they've left. Now, where they go and what happens, that's a separate issue. But we can call that soul. Yeah, and it would also be called Purusha. Prakriti is matter. Purusha is consciousness. Consciousness has left. The sun is the primary icon for consciousness and divinity in the Indian philosophy. And Surya Namaskar is an invocation of that. Now, in Aditya Hritayam, as Dr. Rao was so beautifully teaching, you have this Diti and Aditi. You have this story of Kashyapa, the great sage, standing with his 2 wives, looking at the world. And Kashyapa, I think, means something like one who beholds the entire universe. He's watching everything. And so he has his 2 wives. And Indian philosophy is so abstract and so esoteric, and we often think, oh my God, he's got 2 wives. But Diti means that which is looking outwards, and aditi means that which is looking inwards or not looking outwards. So looking inwards for that bright thing is very much in the spirit of Aditya Hritayam, which translates as the heart of the sun. And Surya Namaskar is a greeting not just to the sun out there in the sky, but the sun inside of you, inside of us. The brightest, best thing that you can imagine about yourself or understand about yourself, you're invoking that. So, you go through these various exercises. There are, I suppose we could count them. We've got the two, got Padangustasana, Padahastasana, two Trikonasanas, two Parsvakonasanas, the four Prasarita Padotanasanas, Parsvakonasana, Parsvottanasana. Then you've got Uttita Hasta Parangustasana, three of those. Let's just call it one thing. Then you've got Ardhabhata Padma, Padmottanasana. Then you've got Utkatasana and Virabhadrasana. So that would be 15. Anyway, numerology is a very important aspect of Indian thought. And I may not even be counting it correctly, but you can bet that that's all been thought of, and they are much more interested about shapes and energy and mythology than they are about physiology and anatomy and this kind of stuff. Now, the thing that I wanted to get into and mention today was just that you start the practice with some kind of expression of honoring of divinity. There's, Surya is a god. So you start with that, and then you finish with Virabhadrasana. And again, Virabhadra is a god. And I spent a long time wondering why, and what does that mean? So Udkata is something like fierce or terrible. So Udkata says, let me do this. And it kind of symbolizes very intense effort or intention. This person is very fixed and very determined in their effort. And then you have this story of Virabhadra, which is deep, deep in Indian culture, and there's a few versions of it. But basically, Shiva is meditating in the forest, doing his thing, being an ascetic and being a yogi, and a beautiful girl comes up from nowhere, and without much thought, he just starts teaching her yoga, and they become lovers, and they're living happily in the forest and doing yoga together. And then it turns out that her father is the king of the whole region, and he's super pissed off when he finds out that she's, with Shiva, who is an ascetic and with matted hair and ashes of the dead and all of those sort of ascetic, crazy yogi things. And there's a bunch of versions of the story, but basically the father is very wise and knows that if he tells his daughter she can't see Shiva, it's just going to break her heart. She'll want him even more. It's not going to work. So instead, he throws a party and invites everybody but Shiva and just tries to remind her of how wonderful her life is and how she has all these friends and relatives and throws a beautiful party in the palace. And she goes and she tries to get Shiva to come, but he's like, no, I wasn't invited. And one way or other, she dies at this party. There's a few versions of it. One version is that everybody starts trash talking Shiva and saying what a rotten guy he is, and she gets so angry she bursts into flames. Another is that they grab her and throw her into the fire. But anyway, for whatever reason, she dies at this party. And Shiva eventually finds out what happened. And when he does, he gets super pissed off, and he jerks a dreadlock out of his head and throws it on the ground, and up comes this apparition, this it's like the form of his rage. And that is Virabhadra coming up out of the ground. The first thing he does is to draw a sword. You're enacting those things when you do these practices. And so Virabhadra goes to the party and kills everybody immediately, including the father, but also everybody that was there. And then it goes on, and very romantically, he takes the corpse of I think it's Sati, and carries her on his shoulder and wanders in his grief through India, and the corpse rots and falls off as he's wandering in 13 places. And those are still today the holy places of India that people go on pilgrimage. And where the vagina fell is in Pashupati in Nepal, it's in Kathmandu, and that is a very big tantric temple, okay? So Indian mythology. Now, why did they put that at the end of primary series? And what significance does that have? And as best I understand it, because these things are highly, highly symbolic, and we tend to get caught up with the story. And it's kind of a romantic story, it's kind of a bittersweet story, it's kind of, there's a lot of interest there. But all of these gods and demons and different aspects are just ways of talking about stuff inside of us. So everybody has Shiva inside of them, everybody has Shakti inside of them, everybody's trying to unite these primal forces. Hatha Yoga is very much about that. And again, it's only my opinion, but I'll give you my best shot, okay? Shiva is the soul and the consciousness aspect. Shakti is like the body and more the materiality. You've got Prakriti and Purusha. So you can always kind of divide things into those two aspects. And Shakti could also be looked at as energy. But I think that it symbolizes the determination. So Shiva, in his bereavement, he's lost Shakti. He's lost his counterpart. He's lost his physical partner. And in his bereavement, he's enraged, and he's ready to do something about it. I think that's symbolic of the person who's struggling through these asana practices and realizes that they've lost contact with their body, they've lost contact with the vessel within which they live, and that warrior, it's not about going out and killing people, it's about killing the obstacles of our own laziness, our own sloth, our own neglect, and absence of effort in our own human life. And so that this, fierce aspect of Shiva coming up, drawing the sword, is a symbol for the person who's intensely interested in bettering their self and going to meet their obstacles and resolved to do it, enraged that they've lost this connection with their own self, an aspect of our own self, and sincerely determined to go and reclaim that and find a way to reconnect. That's how I see it. And I believe that the primary series in Ashtanga Yoga is for sure the most powerful, transformational thing that I've encountered. And if you do that, you get these radical changes in your body and in your mind. And many things can get in the way. Like the old saying says, there's many a slip between the cup and the lip. And as soon as you start getting your practice really strong and really vibrant and really start making some progress, well, here comes a divorce, or here comes a job thing, or here comes a family crisis, or whatever it is. Injuries, all kinds of external setbacks. And I believe that is part and parcel of the yoga process. And I think there's some real wisdom in this old, like Virabhadra drawing the sword and going back to avenge the wrongs that were done and fiercely protecting and avenging and trying to make right what hasn't been done. And, it's all inside of us. It's all inside of us. It's not, there's nobody out there that you need to go chop their head off. You need to chop the head off of your own lazy jerk self that hasn't been living up to your own highest ideals, and, are selfish, lazy, unevolved, hateful, bad side. And if anybody thinks that they don't have that, that means they're even more stupid, because we all do. So that's just a kind of a philosophical version of what, how you might look at this primary series.